In this video, guys, we shall be taking a look at the 2011 animated DreamWorks movie Kung Fu Panda 2, which is the second installment in the Kung Fu Panda franchise. So without further ado, let's get into today's review. Let's get into it. So I thought then that this movie was great, and it was a good addition to the Kung Fu Panda franchise, in which started off so well with Kung Fu Panda 1. And you didn't think that that was going to be topped, and after a few watches of this movie, I think that it actually does meet up to the expectations of the original. It took a few watches because when watching it as a kid, I weren't really bothered, and I did prefer the first one, but after a few watches now, I actually see that, oh, actually, there's a good theme in this movie of trying to find out who his mum and dad is, and what actually happened to him as a kid that ended up with Mr. Ping, and how he got adopted, because we could definitely see from the first movie that he was adopted, and glad that DreamWorks decided to go on this avenue, as this was a good avenue for this particular movie, in my opinion, to explore his past a little bit further and explain the reasons why he is who he is, and maybe give an insight to what happened to his original mum and dad. And that's what this movie provides, and that's what you always like to see in DreamWorks movies, them explore these sorts of avenues, like they did in Shrek, like they did with Puss in Boots, and with all these other DreamWorks movies. They always like to explore this element of what happened before. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and I thought that thread was the main thing for me that really brought the enjoyment and sort of like the excitement levels up a notch, just because you wanted to find out, was the villain involved in the either attack or the disappearance of his mum and dad, or did his mum and dad just leave him, like we see him meet the Robinsons, or is there something else building there that we just don't know about? And obviously Lord Shen is obviously involved, and that's what makes him a great villain as well. On to the villain, and I think he presents himself as better than Tai Lung simply for the fact that he gets personal, as not only did he kill or scare away Po's mum and dad, but he also gives him some sort of like PTSD of what happened as a kid, and that sort of thing of being quite personal. And the reason he did that was because he had a prophecy that the Kung Fu master, who was black and white, was going to defeat him, and obviously that meant a panda. And he was like, no, I must kill all the pandas, because this is my thing to stop the prophecy and stop me getting defeated and taking over China. I must take out all the pandas, and that's what he tried to do, and did that successfully, until obviously Po escaped via his mum dropping him off in these radishes and then running away, so that Po would be protected and would go elsewhere and actually be safe. And that element of things was very interesting, as Lord Shen actually made it quite personal. And Lord Shen, as a actual just villain wise, he felt quite evil at times. He tried to kill Po and the rest of the Furious Five several times, and that sort of thing didn't really, it happened under Tai Lung, don't get me wrong, but with Tai Lung, he had one goal in mind, and that was to get the Dragon Scroll. And as soon as he had that, that's when he found out that actually it's just a reflection thing, saying, oh, it's a mirror and everything like that. That's what we covered in Kung Fu Panda 1 movie review, so if you haven't checked that out, then go check that out after this one. But yeah, I think that element of things was crucial with Tai Lung. However, with Lord Shen, I believe that he wanted just to take over China, and Po was just in the way of him reaching that goal, and he knew that this was the guy that, in the back of his mind, which is going to defeat him in some retrospect. That's why he tried killing him off several times to prevent anything like that from happening. And that was very interesting, very intriguing, how this prophecy theme throughout end up going in Po's favour, and end up meeting the prophecy and meeting this thing after finding out what happened to his parents and after defeating Lord Shen. Moving on, I did also like the foreshadowing element built in this movie, in which people might not have noticed and might have, in which is the use of the inner peace to the body of water, in which is used right at the end to defeat the villains. However, right at the start of the movie, Master Shifu uses this same method in which Po picks up on and tries to learn it throughout the movie of mastering the art of inner peace. And he tries, after learning what he did, Master Shifu, at the start of the movie, he tries to attempt it and he fails, and he attempts it again at the middle or later down the line of the inner peace thing, and fails again, but then uses it at the end. And by then he's learned what happened to his parents, and it was like a hole left in him which he was managed to fill when he finds out what happens to his parents, and that in fact he was adopted, and this is what actually happened to his parents. After that, he was able to accept the inner peace and was able to defeat Lord Shen and his army via using the body of water to deflect these cannon, and using this weapon basically against him and deferring these big cannonball which would have destroyed Po. And he'd used it on him once or twice, but then obviously after a few blows he would have died. So he used this and deflected it back on them unexpectedly. And it was a great end to this movie, and it was a great way of foreshadowing the ending, not only via the prophecy, but also via this element of inner peace, in which I thought was really creative. Moving on, I did also like the end credit scene of the pandas that got so-called driven away and killed and so-called ran away from their homes appear at the end of the movie, say my son's alive or my son's home, or one of the two. And that was great, as that showed that there's going to be a sequel of them exploring Po meeting his mum and dad for the first time, as that's what it looks like it's going to be. And I can't wait for that, as that is something that will explore how his interactions with his father are. Could they be similar to Madagascar 2, where Alex meets his mum and dad in that retrospect, or is it going to be something completely different? And that's what I can't wait to find out in Kung Fu Panda 3, of how Po will interact with his parents and how he's going to bump into his parents in such a way. Finally, then, I also thought the actors and actresses were incredible, as we saw the likes of Jack Black, Angelina Jolie, Dustin Hoffman, the likes of Jackie Chan, also the likes of Seth Rogen, James Hong, David Cross, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Victor Garber, which were all good, and also Gary Oldman playing the villain, in which they all fitted in fantastic well. And this movie was quite star-studded in that retrospect, but did an incredible job, didn't get overcrowded with the amount of big names in there, and did an incredible job. Like I said, Gary Oldman was sensational as the villain, and was arguably the best villain that we've seen so far in the Kung Fu Panda franchise, and can't wait to see what happens in Kung Fu Panda 3. To summarise then, guys, this is an awesome sequel into the Kung Fu Panda franchise, hence why I've rated this movie a 7.3 out of 10, and a world-class film, as it carries on successfully from what we saw in Kung Fu Panda 1, and it explores Po's past in an exceptional way, in which makes the franchise better. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because I've noticed there's not enough people who are watching the channel subscribing. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell to be alerted to all new content that this channel creates, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Laters.